The NFL Network reported he was jumped and robbed while the team had already arrived in Ireland ahead of their historic game against the Minnesota Vikings.
The streets of Dublin erupted in chaos when Skylar Thompson was jumped and robbed just hours after arriving for a historic game against the Minnesota Vikings. Now new footage is going viral showing exactly what went down. And trust me, it's far worse than anyone expected. So how bad was it really? Let's break it down. A night in Temple Bar gone horribly wrong. Let's start with exactly what happened on the night of September 26, 2025, because the details paint a disturbing picture of how quickly a routine evening can turn into a violent nightmare. The Pittsburgh Steelers had arrived in Dublin on Friday morning, flying in ahead of their historic game against the Minnesota Vikings at Croke Park, the NFL's first ever regular season game in Ireland.
Skylar Thompson, the Pittsburgh Steelers' backup quarterback, experienced a harrowing incident Friday night in Dublin. The NFL Network reported he was jumped and robbed while the team had already arrived in Ireland ahead of their historic game against the Minnesota Vikings. He's currently on injured reserve with a hamstring injury.
The team checked into their accommodations, and sources say the Steelers lodged at Carton House, about 45 minutes from the city center.
Sources say the Steelers arrived Friday morning in Dublin and had lodged at Carton House, about 45 minutes from the city center. Some team members ventured into town, and it appears that's when the incident occurred.
Skylar Thompson, the team's backup quarterback, was on injured reserve with a hamstring strain he'd sustained back on September 10th during a Week 1 practice. He wasn't going to play in the game. He was there purely for team morale and promotional purposes. After the team's activities that evening, Thompson made a decision that would change everything. He ventured out alone into Dublin's nightlife. Around 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., Thompson was walking around Temple Bar, the city's most famous nightlife district. Picture a maze of cobblestone streets packed with colorful pubs like the Palace Bar, tourists stumbling between venues, street performers entertaining crowds, and the general chaos of one of Europe's busiest entertainment zones. There's no indication Thompson was intoxicated or doing anything provocative. By all accounts, he was simply exploring the city like thousands of other visitors do every night. Then, at approximately 2:30 a.m. on Dame Street, at the edge of Temple Bar, everything went sideways. Thompson was approached by a group of unidentified males. Reports suggest anywhere from 3 to 5 attackers, though this hasn't been officially confirmed. What happened next was swift and brutal. Thompson was jumped, which in street parlance means he was ambushed and physically assaulted by multiple attackers at once.
Per Tom Pelissero, Friday night, Steelers third-string backup quarterback Skylar Thompson in Dublin was jumped and robbed. I'm reading the story. He was jumped and robbed. He did suffer minor injuries as part of the altercation, but is okay and with the team. Skylar Thompson, he is currently on injured reserve for Pittsburgh, so it's not like he would have been playing today.
The assault involved punches and kicks. Thompson sustained minor injuries, bruises and cuts, thankfully nothing to the face. But the psychological trauma of being attacked by multiple assailants in a foreign country can't be measured. Invisible wounds. The attackers stole his mobile phone, likely a high-end smartphone worth upwards of 800 euros, and fled into the night. No weapons were reported in the attack, which likely prevented this from becoming far more serious or even fatal. The entire attack lasted under 30 seconds, typical of opportunistic muggings in crowded nightlife zones where attackers want to strike fast and disappear before anyone can intervene or identify them. And the reality is chilling. This could have ended very differently.
This easily could have been a life or death situation. Because anytime something like this happens or you get robbed or mugged, you never know if it's gonna cross that line of, they're just robbing me to they're going to try to kill me and get away with it.
Emergency services responded to a 999 call around 2:45 to 3:30 a.m. The call likely came from Thompson himself, or possibly a passerby, who witnessed the aftermath. And Garda Síochána, Ireland's national police force, arrived at the scene along with the National Ambulance Service. Thompson was treated on site for his injuries and cleared medically, meaning he didn't require hospitalization beyond a brief evaluation. He returned to his hotel unescorted, rejoining his teammates around 4 a.m. Here's where the story story gets interesting from a media perspective. Thompson immediately notified Steelers coaches and security staff about what had happened. NFL security was alerted and an internal review began. But at this stage, there was no media leak. The Steelers and the NFL were trying to gather information and assess the situation before it became public knowledge. The story didn't break publicly until Saturday, September 28th at approximately 7 a.m. EDT, when NFL Network insider Tom Pelissero posted about it on X, formerly Twitter. Pelissero, known for his credible insider reporting, cited sources, likely team or NFL insiders, and his tweet immediately went viral. Within minutes, the Steelers issued an official statement through their spokesman, Burt Loughton.
This is the statement from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Burt Loughton, quote, "We are aware of a situation involving Skylar Thompson on Friday night in Dublin. We will have no further comment at this time as we are working with NFL security to gather more information regarding the incident," end quote.
Notice the carefully chosen language, a situation rather than assault or robbery, a deliberate effort to downplay what happened while the investigation was ongoing. This is standard crisis management. Acknowledge awareness, defer to authorities, and say as little as possible to avoid legal complications or inflaming the situation. The NFL Players Association also released a statement. "We are aware of the incident involving Skylar Thompson in Ireland and are relieved to know he is okay. The NFLPA is actively gathering more information. As always, our priority is the health and safety of our player members, especially as we continue to work on player protections and well-being while playing international games." That last line is crucial. The NFLPA was already pivoting to use this incident as leverage in their ongoing advocacy for better player protections during international games. And they had a valid point to make about where the league's security was when this happened.
Like, where was NFL security? Like, seriously. If you're the National Football League and there were issues of this in previous international games, i.e. Brazil last year, where you pretty much told the players not to leave their hotel rooms, you need a greater security presence. You're the National Football League.
Now let's talk about the investigation itself, because as of September 29th, 2025, no arrests have been made. The case is being handled by the Pierce Street Garda Station, which covers Dublin 2, and it's classified as a robbery with assault under Ireland's criminal justice, theft and fraud offenses, Act 2001, and non-fatal offenses against the Person Act 1997. The Gardaí are focusing heavily on CCTV footage. Dublin has over 500 cameras in the Temple Bar area alone, and footage from Dame Street and adjacent alleys is under intensive review. They're also attempting to trace Thompson's stolen phone via GPS data, collaborating with his US-based carrier. If the phone had iCloud locks or similar security features, it may be difficult for the thieves to resell, but the GPS data could lead investigators directly to the perpetrators. The challenge is that Ireland's Data Protection Act 2018 restricts public disclosure of CCTV footage or victim details, which means we're unlikely to see any dramatic surveillance footage released to the public. This protects victim privacy, but also frustrates the media's hunger for visual evidence. No suspect descriptions have been released either, which is standard procedure in Ireland to avoid potential bias or vigilante justice before charges are filed. If suspects are identified and apprehended, they could face robbery charges carrying up to 7 years in prison, or assault causing harm with a maximum of 5 years. However, if the attackers turn out to be youths, which is common in Temple Bar assaults according to Garda statistics, they may be diverted to juvenile liaison schemes rather than facing prison time. The incident raises a disturbing question. Where was NFL security? Where was the buddy system? Where were the protocols that should protect players traveling internationally? Thompson, as a backup quarterback on injured reserve, wasn't afforded the same level of protection as star players. He was essentially alone in one of Dublin's most crime-prone areas at 2:30 in the morning, making him an easy target for opportunistic criminals who saw a tall American tourist and decided he was fair game. Despite the physical trauma, Thompson appeared on the sideline at Croke Park during the Steelers' 24-21 victory over the Vikings, showing no visible injuries. The game went on, the NFL celebrated its Irish debut, and 82,000 fans cheered without fully knowing the nightmare that had unfolded just hours before kickoff. Thompson returned to the United States with the team after the game, and while he's physically okay, the psychological impact of being violently attacked in a foreign country is something that may take far longer to heal than his minor bruises. But to understand why Skylar Thompson's attack wasn't just a random unfortunate incident, but part of a broader troubling pattern, we need to examine what's really happening on the streets of Dublin, and specifically in Temple Bar, the neighborhood where Thompson was attacked. Dublin's dark side, a city wrestling with crime. Dublin is Ireland's vibrant capital, with approximately 1.5 million people in the metropolitan area and attracts over 7 million tourists annually. It's a city known for its literary history, friendly locals, and booming tech economy, home to European headquarters for Google, Meta, and Pfizer. On the surface, it's a modern, cosmopolitan European capital. But beneath that postcard-perfect exterior lies a growing problem that city officials have been reluctant to fully acknowledge. Violent street crime is surging, particularly in the city center, and Thompson's attack was far from the first incident to rock Temple Bar.
In what is shaping up to be a bumper week for all the wrong reasons for Dublin, crime, the Gardaí, and now tourism, yet another attack on the streets of Dublin. This time an English tourist has been hospitalised with serious head injuries after an assault in the popular Temple Bar area.
Let's look at the hard data. According to official statistics from Garda Síochána and the Central Statistics Office, CSO, Dublin metropolitan region saw sharp increases in street-level offenses throughout 2024 and into 2025. While overall, crime rose 5% nationally in 2024, Dublin's numbers told a more alarming story. Assaults in the Dublin metropolitan region increased by 9% in 2024, with males being the primary victims. Even more concerning, robberies, extortion, and hijackings jumped 18% nationally, with a 16% increase specifically in Dublin. By Q1 2025, robbery incidents had increased 24% compared to 2022 levels. These aren't minor upticks. These are significant spikes that indicate a serious problem. Temple Bar, where Thompson was attacked, is ground zero for much of this violence. The area spans just 0.5 square kilometers, but hosts over 50 pubs and attracts 5 million visitors yearly. On weekend nights, particularly Fridays and Saturdays, crowds can swell to over 10,000 people at 2 a.m., creating a chaotic environment where alcohol-fueled brawls and petty theft flourish.
For anyone thinking of traveling to Dublin, the Temple Bar is arguably one of the most popular destinations from people coming in from outside of Dublin. The reason is because the prices there are absolutely extortionate, and anyone with a right thinking brain wouldn't go anywhere near that place at the best of times to have a night out. But tourists don't know that, so it attracts tourists in particular, and it also attracts some of the lesser elements also, by the looks of things.
The neighborhood accounts for an estimated 15% of all assaults in Dublin City, despite representing a tiny fraction of the city's geography. Think about that for a moment. One small district is responsible for 15% of all violent assaults in Ireland's capital city. What's driving this surge in violence? Multiple factors are at play, creating a perfect storm of urban dysfunction. First, there's Dublin's homelessness crisis, which hit 14,000 people in 2025, up 10% from 2024. Many homeless individuals congregate in Temple Bar for panhandling, leading to what some social media users have described as zombie-like street scenes. Second, youth gang activity from disadvantaged estates like Ballyfermot and Finglas has increased, with teenagers aged 12, 17 involved in 30% of assaults according to Garda youth diversion reports. These aren't hardened criminals. Many are bored kids from impoverished backgrounds looking for thrills or quick money from phone snatches and muggings. Third, the sheer volume of tourists creates a target-rich environment. Garda data shows that 40% of robberies in Temple Bar specifically target foreigners, who are often visibly carrying valuables, don't know which streets to avoid, and may be intoxicated after a night of pub hopping. Tourists are ideal victims from a criminal's perspective. They're disoriented, unlikely to return for court proceedings, and often don't report crimes because they're only in town briefly. Thompson's attack wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a disturbing pattern of violence against visitors. Just weeks before Thompson's assault, on September 21st, an English tourist was stabbed in Temple Bar and left in critical condition with severe head injuries.
Emergency services were alerted to reports of an assault in Temple Bar just before 1 a.m. and discovered a male with serious injuries. The tourist was rushed to hospital and he is understood to have been transferred to Beaumont Hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery overnight.
In another horrific incident, a 17-year-old was stabbed 20 times by a hooded scooter gang in Temple Bar, barely surviving the attack. In December 2024, 2 off-duty Gardaí were hospitalized after a brawl in Temple Bar, with one left in critical condition. Even in August 2023, a British tourist was attacked by a group of youths in an unprovoked assault. The pattern is clear. Temple Bar has become a hunting ground for violent criminals who know that intoxicated tourists make easy targets.
And they're appealing for witnesses. There's been a number of high-profile assaults in the Temple Bar in recent years. They even name a few of them. Mind you, they're only naming a couple. In August 2023, a British tourist was attacked by a group of youths in an unprovoked attack. And last December, a male was left with serious head injuries following another unprovoked attack, details of which can't be outlined as the two men are currently facing charges before the courts. And that's not even scratching the surface of what has been going on.
The Irish government's response has been inadequate at best. Justice Minister Jim O'Callaghan has repeatedly promised to increase Garda visibility, but residents and visitors aren't seeing results.
Is to ensure that we see more Gardaí on our streets and that there's greater Garda visibility. That's why I'm trying to ensure that we recruit more people into the force, but also that more Gardaí are out in our streets of our towns, villages and cities. We've seen it in Dublin where there's been greater Garda visibility on our streets, and I want to see now more Gardaí on the streets in Cork and Limerick and our other cities, and indeed throughout the whole country.
The government did launch Operation Citizen in 2024, deploying 200 extra officers to the Dublin metropolitan region and increasing high visibility patrols in Temple Bar by 25%. Dublin's CCTV network was expanded to over 500 cameras, though privacy laws severely limit how this footage can be used publicly. Failte Ireland, the National Tourism Development Authority, allocated a €10 million Safe City Fund for improved lighting, safe zones, and a Dublin Safe app for real-time security alerts. But throwing money at a problem doesn't solve it if the underlying socioeconomic issues, poverty, addiction, youth disengagement, aren't addressed. The tourism industry is starting to feel the impact. Dublin generated €2.5 billion in tourism revenue in 2024, but visitor numbers have been declining month by month as word spreads about safety concerns.
I'm not trying to frighten you away, but I'm trying to make you aware of what you could be facing if you go into some of the popular tourist spots, even in the city centre itself. You don't need to go down some darkened alley in some hole-in-the-hedge town. No, this is happening slap bang in the middle of Temple Bar in Dublin, and it's not the first time that it's happened, and I would bet the house on it that it won't be the last time it happens either.
Some foreign embassies have issued warnings to their citizens about visiting Dublin at night, advising them to avoid certain areas and not display valuables, the kind of warnings typically reserved for cities in developing nations, not European capitals. Safety ratings reflect this deteriorating situation. Numbeo's 2025 crime index gives Dublin a safety score of 52 out of 100, rating it as moderate risk. That's worse than Paris, but better than some US cities. However, these aggregate numbers mask the reality that certain neighborhoods, particularly Temple Bar late at night, are far more dangerous than the citywide average suggests. The Thompson incident has become a flashpoint in a larger debate about Dublin's future. Can the city continue to position itself as a world-class destination for major events like NFL games when visitors, including professional athletes, aren't safe walking the streets at night? The NFL's Dublin game generated an estimated €50 million economic boost, but will the league return if they can't guarantee player safety? These aren't easy questions, and they don't have simple answers. But one thing is clear: Dublin has a serious problem that goes far beyond one football player getting mugged. The city is at a crossroads, and the choices officials make in response to incidents like Thompson's attack will determine whether Dublin becomes known as a safe, welcoming destination or a cautionary tale about urban decay in modern Europe. To truly understand the impact of what happened to Skylar Thompson in Dublin, you need to understand who Skylar Thompson is, because his story is one of relentless perseverance in the face of adversity that would have broken most people. The quarterback who refused to quit. Skylar John Thompson was born on June 4, 1997, in Columbia, Missouri, growing up in Independence, a Kansas City suburb, with more connection to Harry Truman's presidential library than football glory. His early life was marked by tragedy that would shape everything that came after. When Thompson was just 5 years old, in kindergarten, both his mother and his grandfather received devastating diagnoses that would change his life forever.
I was in kindergarten, and my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and then my grandfather, my dad's dad, got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and both were given a short time to live. And at a time, where I was very young, and that didn't make sense to me what that was. I had no idea what cancer meant, so my dad was just basically explaining to me that they both were very sick, and that our lives were going to change a little bit.
For a 5-year-old, this was incomprehensible. He couldn't understand what cancer meant or why his world was suddenly falling apart. His father had to explain that both his mother and grandfather were very sick and that their lives were about to change dramatically. Doctors told Thompson's mother she had months to live and that treatment would be essentially pointless. But she refused to accept that death sentence. Instead of giving up, she chose to fight.
And so my dad drove her around all around the country to the best cancer treatment centers in the country, to give her the best treatment possible. And, she ended up passing away on May 11th, 2004. And then my grandfather passed away a couple months later. So
despite her determination and the family's efforts, Thompson's mother passed away on May 11th, 2004. A few months later, his grandfather followed. In the span of a few months, 5-year-old Skylar Thompson lost the two most important people in his young life. And from that tragedy, he found his driving force.
For me, that has been my drive my entire life is I'm going to carry my mom's legacy with me. And I'm going to build on it, and I'm going to make it even better than it was when she was on earth. And, and especially when times get hard, when adversity hits, she's the first person I think about. There's been times in my life where I've thought about giving up, thought about walking away from something, but then I think about my mom. I think about that time when she was facing cancer and whether she could have given up or she could have got treatment, and she chose to not give up and get treatment and face the odds of winning.
The loss transformed Thompson. He became an angry kid, getting into fights at recess, acting out, struggling to process grief that no 5-year-old should have to bear. His father remarried a couple years later, and they moved to Kansas City for a fresh start. Thompson made his father promise. If they moved, he had to be allowed to play football. His father agreed, despite having zero background in football. They came from a basketball family. But Thompson found his calling on the football field. He started playing quarterback in 4th grade and never looked back. At Fort Osage High School from 2013 to 2016, Thompson became a dual-threat dynamo, amassing 6,222 passing yards and 71 touchdowns over 46 games, while adding 1,200 rushing yards and 15 scores on the ground. His senior year in 2015 was a breakout, 2,800 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, and a state semifinal appearance, earning him all-state honors. Thompson was a 3-star recruit who drew interest from mid-major programs, but Kansas State offered him a shot at the Big 12. He took it. Arriving in 2016, Thompson redshirted his freshman year, using the time to bulk up and learn the offense. His breakthrough came as a redshirt sophomore in 2018, when he started 10 games and led the Wildcats to an 8-5 record, including a Texas Bowl win over Arkansas. That season, he threw for 2,326 yards, 14 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions, with 384 rushing yards, earning Big 12 Newcomer of the Year consideration. But Thompson's college career would be defined by adversity as much as achievement. By his junior year in 2019, he was the undisputed starter, but a knee injury sidelined him after 6 games. Then COVID-19 disrupted the 2020 season. Then came a devastating shoulder injury that cost him nearly an entire year. Thompson had to learn to throw a football all over again. The process was agonizing, filled with doubt and fear.
After I hurt my shoulder, I was in the training room every single day and having to start over a little bit, throwing a football. And it's literally starting from square one. And that was so terrifying to me because there's so many thoughts of, is it going to be the same? What is this going to look like? I never faced any severe injury ever in my life until then. This is the first time I faced it.
But he refused to quit, driven by the memory of his mother who had fought cancer rather than accepting defeat. He came back for a 6th year in 2021, only to hurt his knee in the 2nd game of the season with a high ankle sprain late in the year. Each time Thompson got knocked down, he found a way to get back up. And through it all, he kept believing in himself.
And one thing I've always prided myself on is I've always believed in myself, and I've always believed I'm good enough to accomplish my ultimate goal of playing in the NFL. And my road to where I'm at now is my road. Everybody's process to their destination, whatever it may look like, is going to look different.
His final game at Kansas State was the 2021 Texas Bowl against LSU, a team that had won a national championship just 2 years earlier. This was Thompson's last chance to prove himself, to finish his story the right way. And going into that game, he had one mentality.
It was like I had a level of confidence that it didn't matter what LSU did. It didn't matter whatever happened. I was going to win that game. And I had the mentality of, I'm going to go score 50, 60 points on these guys, and I'm not going to hold back. And that was our mentality.
Kansas State demolished LSU, and Thompson had the game of his life. Sitting on the bench after his final snaps, Thompson turned to his performance coach and said something remarkable. "Bro, I think this was my best game ever." Over 5 seasons at Kansas State, 40 starts in 45 games, Thompson became the only Wildcat quarterback with 6,000 plus passing yards and 1,000 plus rushing yards. He graduated in December 2021 with a degree in criminology, reflecting his interest in justice and community protection. The Miami Dolphins selected Thompson in the 7th round of the 2022 NFL Draft, 246th overall. In 2023, Thompson appeared in 7 games as Tua Tagovailoa's primary backup, completing 71.6% of his passes for 505 yards. In 2024, he played 6 games with an 89.2 passer rating and 1 start, proving himself a reliable backup in Miami's quick-release offensive system. Then came the trade. On March 15, 2025, Thompson was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a conditional 7th-round pick and cash consideration. A low-cost move for the Steelers, but a fresh start for Thompson. The trade reunited him with former Kansas State coordinator Chris Beatty, now the Steelers' passing game coordinator. Thompson impressed in training camp and preseason, flashing in the August 17th Hall of Fame game against Houston with an 85-yard touchdown drive. But then came another cruel twist. A grade 1 hamstring strain during Week 1 practice on September 10th landed him on injured reserve, sidelining him for at least 4 games. That injury is why Thompson was in Dublin not as a player but as a cheerleader and promotional presence. He wasn't supposed to see the field. He was just there to support his teammates during this historic international game. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.